Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we have a very special episode because we are going to talk about something that is slightly off topic for us, but it is really at the top of everybody's minds, at least in India, for this week and the coming weeks. We have with us a very special guest, my dear colleague Amitabh Sinha, who has been covering space, climate, science for literally decades now, and is on top of the Chandrayaan 3 launch. And we'll talk about Chandrayaan, but also what is behind this entire moon race, maybe not space race, but moon race is again becoming a new point of contention for many countries. Amitabh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nandu. Glad to be here. Right.
Amitabh, I think it's important to maybe give people a little bit of context. Like the moon is not a new frontier. It's been conquered before. So why do countries you suddenly see there are many people going after the moon again? India has tried before. So is there any reason why people still want to do it?
Yes. So actually, no, it's good to see Chandrayaan 3 in the light of a little bit of history about moon probes, and as you would know, we have been on the moon. In fact, we have landed human beings on moon way back in 1969. So that's more than 50 years ago. Yes. Now, and we did that not just once, but 6 times. There were 6 Apollo missions that landed humans on the moon. So, having done that, why again? I mean, the question that you asked: why should we be doing it all over again? And it seems that we are not taking human beings there any longer. We are actually starting almost from the scratch, isn't it?
Yes.
So, so the current round of moon probes, which can be traced back to the 1990s, that we started sending orbiters to probe the moon all over again. This current round is qualitatively very different from what we tried to do in the 1960s or what the Apollo achieved in the 1960s and early 1970s. So at that point of time, yes, landing human beings on moon was a huge technological leap. I mean, it's unimaginable, the kind of the significance of the achievement that was done in 1960s. It would also become more clear if we realize that space age had begun just about 12 years ago. The first satellite that was sent was only 1957. So in 12 years from sending the first satellite in space, we landed human beings on moon. I mean, it's a super fast kind of technology development. Now, the problem was having done that. And also, I mean, we won't probably have the time to talk about why we did that. The motivations at that time were completely different. It's definitely not science, but, that's a different discussion. Once we did land on moon, in itself, it was a huge achievement. But having done that, there was we didn't know what to do ahead. I mean, what to do more and how to take it forward. And that was mainly because, the technology ecosystem that would have allowed us to take the benefit of that landing, that achievement, and expand it to do something much more than that. That technology ecosystem wasn't available. So as I said, it was just 12 years since we, got into space, and suddenly we found ourselves on moon. We didn't know what to do with it. So we carried some of these stones and everything, and which kept scientists busy for quite some time, just trying to figure out what is the mineralogy of the moon and all those sort of things. But we didn't know what to do next after that. And suddenly, that's why you see after the last Apollo mission, there is a complete lull for about 2 decades, wherein there were no further missions to moon and there was nothing happening on the moon front. And suddenly we start seeing this again, starting from the early 1990s. NASA sent some probe missions to moon, and then after other countries also joined in. We sent our first Chandrayaan mission in 2014, sent the second in 2019, which failed to land, but it did. The orbiter functioned quite well, and now we are sending third. In between, lots of other countries have also sent. China has managed to make a soft landing, not humans, but orbiter, the lander part. So there is a renewed mission, interest in moon, and this time, as I said, it is qualitatively different. We are going to moon not just with the objective of landing, but using it and using the resources available on moon to do something more, and that more is about using moon as a launch pad to go further into deep into
Yeah.
space. And there are certain reasons to do that. One, of course, the gravity on moon is, of course, not as strong as on Earth. So if we spend a relatively little amount of energy in launching our rockets from moon, it would go much deeper than the kind of energy that would be required on Earth. So it makes a lot of sense for us to start launching from moon. But launching from moon is not it's not a straightforward exercise. You have to build the facilities, and that facilities again would require it would also require a lot of brick and mortar, isn't it? Not just
Yeah.
space tech and all, and carrying all of that from here to moon to create a permanent facility, a permanent laboratory, a permanent launch station at moon, that again doesn't work out economically. Huge amount of brick and mortar and water and all sorts of things have to
Yep.
be carried to the moon. So the idea then is to use the internal resources of moon in situ, whatever resources are available, use that to build a permanent research facility on moon, and then use moon to launch human beings much further into space. And the difference from the previous time and now is that now we have the technologies available to do that. It is now, it's possible now to be able to use the moon's resources, build things using the resources available there. You don't have to carry a lot of things from the Earth. You have 3D printing available, those technologies available. So you
Yeah.
can use
Yeah.
that and build a sort of facility there. Now, of course, the big thing would be power, energy. How do you where do you find the energy? Do you have to
Yeah.
carry all the fuel from Earth? Now, again, that would be problematic if you have to carry all the fuel from
Mhm.
Earth. So the fuel that you're looking at, and a lot of people got very excited when water was discovered on the moon, and that was done through one of the instruments on board Chandrayaan 1. In fact, two instruments detected water. One was the M3, and the other one, the name I'm forgetting. But there was a huge excitement, and the import of that discovery was not immediately very evident. We were thinking, oh, water is something, maybe we were linking water to life. Now, of course, we were not looking for life on moon, but it is not the water that is important. What we are looking at, if there is water, which means there are hydrogen molecules there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the hydrogen that we are interested in, not
Mhm.
exactly water. So if there is, if we, and now we have technologies to split water into, hydrogen and hydroxide molecules. So if we are able to extract hydrogen from the water molecules, then that's the ready-made fuel that we have, which we can use to power our facilities, which we can use to launch our rockets much further, and send much deeper space probes from moon. So that is the whole thing. That is the thing that is unveiling in front of us
Yeah.
right now. It's not just about going to the moon, but using moon to go much further. I'm sorry, it was a long
Amitabh,
answer to the
yeah,
context.
but this is what we don't usually talk about, right? No, but Amitabh, a stupid question that came to my mind when you were explaining this, like you are looking to in a way exploit the resources on the moon, and
Yeah,
when you talk about resources anywhere, there is of course the question of ownership, right? Like
yeah,
you know that China has already been there. For instance, just giving a very simplistic example,
yes,
India is trying to do it, right?
yes.
Now, so if both of us are able to do it and we are looking at the next level, who
Yeah,
owns the moon? Like, how do you divide the resources on the moon? Because, you have Antarctica maybe, which is in a similar kind of a
yes,
situation.
yes,
But,
yes.
how does that work? Is there any framework that, the countries around the world have thought of on how to do something like this? Or will it be a
Yes.
collaborative exercise?
So great. In fact, because you gave the example of Antarctica, Antarctica is so there is an international agreement on Antarctica. Similarly, on the Arctic region as well. These
Yeah,
are
yeah.
these are considered commons. These are not. So even though countries have set up like their permanent research facilities, and we also have
Hmm.
research facilities both in
Yeah,
Antarctica and in the Arctic region, we actually do not own that space, and nobody
yeah,
does.
yeah,
Nobody this space in Antarctica or Antarctica or the Arctic region. These are global commons, and something similar is talked about in this space as well. Not just moon, but also the entire space region. It is supposed to be global common, wherein you don't own it. You can work around, you can utilize the resources, but you actually do not own it. And there are already international agreements in place. One of them recently was in news as well, the Outer Space Treaty, when during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, there was a space agreement that was also signed. The joint statement had a space component as well, and one of the things that we heard was India becoming part of the Artemis Accords, and in that context, we heard about Outer Space Treaty, and there are other space treaties as well. So the Outer Space Treaty actually does exactly that. You know, uh, it talks. It's a sort of a common agreement on what is good behavior in space, right? So that you don't take each other's assets out, you don't attack each other, you don't own anything, but you can utilize the space and you can use the resources, and you can place your satellites and those kind of things. So outer space treaty is a general treaty, and there is one very specific treaty which is a follow up to the outer space treaty, which is called the moon treaty. Now moon treaty is very specific about what you can do on moon, right? Not all countries. Outer space treaty has been signed by most of the countries, spacefaring nations. This moon treaty, not everyone is signatory to it, and crucially the United States is not a signatory to it. So moon treaty is something which which talks about what you can or cannot or should not be doing once you are on moon, and exactly the kind of things that you have been saying, uh, that there would be no ownership, that this is
yeah.
common, that all the things would be collaborative, and that fruits of research or the fruits of whatever we get once we are on the moon, fruits of the resources, that would be common sort of wealth of the entire globe. So we have specific arrangements on that. Now, of course, this is still contentious. It's not a settled issue. And in fact, again, this is a separate discussion, but the Artemis Accords actually opens up a whole new debate on the Moon Treaty itself. We won't go there, but you are right. The resources as envisaged is global common property.
Common property. So,
Yeah.
and Amita, before we go on to the Chandrayaan specifics, I wanted to also ask you, like every time you have a mission like this, eh, mm, and be it any country, and even if it's a failed mission, it also pushes the envelope on science to a certain extent, right? Because you make improvements on a lot of technologies, a lot of know-how, and you also figure out how to do things. So is India trying to achieve something like this by also doing this launch this time?
Exactly. So, yes, Chandrayaan 2 did not, ISRO would like to call it 80% or 90% success. I would
Yes,
say
success. Yeah,
90% failure that ways,
yeah, yeah.
because our main objective was not achieved, and the orbiter part we have done earlier, but the
Mhm.
main mission objective was not achieved. But I remember, Nandu, you and I were at a workshop yesterday, and where
Yeah.
we were talking success and failures, and one of the things
Yes.
that was talked about, and it stuck, there are no failures, it's either success or
All
learning. you
learnings.
know
Yes.
so this Chandrayaan 2 was also sort of a learning. We were trying to do something for the first time, make a soft landing on on the moon. We almost got there. We did not do the right the last part right, but it was an accident. It's not that we were not able. You look at it, even 50 years after the human landing on moon,
Yeah.
there are only three countries that have actually been able to soft land on moon or soft land their instruments on moon. It's only the US, Russia, and China. And others have tried and failed. In fact, around the time that Chandrayaan 2 failed to land on the moon, Israel's made a similar attempt, and it actually failed in a similar kind of Israeli, lander also failed in a similar way, that it crash landed, wasn't able to control the speed. After that, also a couple of attempts have been made. I think there was a Saudi Arabian, lander that was trying to land, a Japanese lander that was trying to land, and those two missions also did not succeed. So it's not something that is very, very unusual. I mean, these kind of things, if you look at even the US space program and the Russian space program, they have had failures as well. In fact, the Artemis, which was supposed to be launched last year, it had starting troubles. It couldn't be launched in the first two attempts. Only in the third attempt it was launched. So these are very normal things in the space sector. These are things that are very also complicated. Also, very small margin of error is present. A very small error can actually magnify or take down the entire sort of mission. So I'm sure. So the fact that it was a setback, and no doubt, also the fact that it has pushed back ISRO's timeline a little bit. A little also because of COVID, but even without COVID, it had been pushed back. But of course, I mean, it's a learning. We'll do it and we'll move ahead. This is again Chandrayaan 3 landing on the moon. Again, it's a huge thing, but it's only a part of the process, because India also is looking ahead at doing much more on moon, or setting up a permanent station on moon, and getting part of these collaborative exercises wherein you start thinking in terms of setting up a permanent facility and extracting the resources of moon. So this is just a process, and I'm sure they have figured it out, and they'll be able to do it this time.
So from Chandrayaan 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, and this movement from 2 to 3, so are we just trying to do what 2 could not, or have we also used the opportunity to add maybe new elements and new features to this entire mission, which also helps us to maybe accelerate a little bit more than what we would have done otherwise?
So actually not. I mean, the Chandrayaan 3, in terms of its science objectives, it is almost the same what Chandrayaan 2. One of the reasons was that we wanted to do it immediately. So we are not looking at integrating something else. The other part was that we wanted to get this right, because putting more instruments on board, if we are not able to do it right again, it goes waste. A lot of effort goes waste. So landing is a very key technology. So we want to get that right and then move on, leap onto other technologies. So in terms of the science objectives, it's more or less or exactly the same. That the instruments that are on board are exactly what they were on Chandrayaan 2. The design part, of course, is slightly tweaked, mainly to add layers of redundancies, so that a situation like one that developed last time could be avoided. So if there was one system to deal with the contingency that arose, now we have 5 systems to deal with that kind of contingency. So a little bit of redundancy,
which is a
learning. So the thing is, in terms of design, there are some changes, not huge, but some changes in design, but not in the science part. The science part remains more or less the same.
Now, before we wind up, one last question. So, is this primarily in the government domain still? Because we have so much, private intervention happening in the space. Even in India, there are many companies in this space right now. So, are we going to see, private participation or private explorations into the moon also? Or is there a moratorium on that? Like, is it still beyond their
So there is no moratorium as such, but there is no private, at least in India right now, private company which is actually getting into the research part of it. See, when India opened up its space sector roughly around 2017, 18, 19, and we allowed a lot of private parties to start operating in this space and space tech sectors, it was to take the load off ISRO, because ISRO was being bogged down with a lot of things which any other company could have dealt with, like launching services. For example, no, ISRO was launching a lot of these satellites of foreign companies and putting it. That's a fairly
Yeah,
regular sort
yeah.
of an exercise. A lot of private companies can do that. No, you develop a rocket and then you start a launching service. No, that doesn't require too much of science. No, it's a
Mhm.
little bit of technology, but not science. So the way it was seen was that whatever has been done, and whatever there is technology that is already established and is available, let the private companies exploit those technologies and provide the services, provide data, or whatever they want to get into, and let ISRO start focusing on science and research part, which would mean sending deep planetary missions, which would mean looking for extraterrestrial life, the kind of science that NASA or the European Space Agency is being involved in. I mean, NASA is not doing commercial launches that way. So, sometimes it does send a few satellites, but ISRO was getting bogged down with these kind of commercial satellite launches. They sounded great. No, we have the world record of sending the largest number of satellites at one go. But in terms of progression being made in terms of science, we were moving very slowly. So it will expedite that. Now, at some point of time, the private space companies, they might also become sophisticated, and we can imagine someone developing like SpaceX in India as well. In
Mhm.
fact, SpaceX is the inspiration of all the space
Yes.
startups that we have in India.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to one of them just a couple of hours ago,
Mhm.
and he was a mechanical engineer,
Yeah.
and he said, I was thinking about building cars, and that was my passion. And when I went to SpaceX, I realized that these guys are are building rockets and spaceships just like we assemble cars, and
Right.
that's where I realized that there's a connect and I can move into space, right? So SpaceX is actually a huge inspiration for these guys. So fairly, I mean, we can imagine one of them developing like that, and probably looking at exploration as well. But right now, I think the division is quite clear that ISRO would focus mainly on the science and engineering aspect, the science part, exploration, and the rest of the things can be taken care of by the private companies.
Amitabh, thanks a lot for being on the show. Again, the kind of 360 view that you get of the moon from having talked to you, I think, yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you, Nandu. Thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So you were listening to Our Own Devices, and this time we had Amitabh Sinha of the Indian Express with us. We'll be back again next week with another guest and a lot more insight and knowledge. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your podcast.